Hello, my name is Daniel Fisher, Origination Manager at Abatable, and this is Developing Carbon Stories, a podcast about the project developers creating the most innovative and impactful carbon projects in the world. Developing Carbon Stories is a podcast by Abatable, an intelligence and procurement platform for the voluntary carbon market. In each episode, we speak with an entrepreneur from a different part of the carbon ecosystem and talk about their journey so far and how they are contributing to the fight against climate change. In Series 3 of the podcast, we're taking a focused look at the importance of nature-based solutions and their special ability to combat climate change while providing a host of additional co-benefits. In this episode, we speak with Marioldy Sánchez, a forest engineer and associate at the Peruvian NGO AIDER, which specialises in the environmental conservation and sustainable development of forest landscapes. Marioldy is also a CSO observer to the Science Policy Interface of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. In our chat, we discuss one of AIDER's flagship projects, the Nikaniti Red Plus project, which is one of the NCSA's list of lighthouse projects. We talk about how AIDER uses the Red Plus mechanism to fund the project's conservation work, the challenges of working with 7 indigenous communities to help protect the forest, and how the carbon markets have changed since the project came to life. We also explore the impact last year's criticisms of Red Plus and the voluntary carbon market have had on Nikaniti and AIDER's vital work. We recorded this episode at the start of October 2023, in the run-up to COP28. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Hi, Marioldy. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. It's great to have you here. Really looking forward to covering what I'm lucky enough to work with you on, and hopefully sort of being able to go into some more detail about the amazing work you guys are doing out in Peru. I guess first of all, it'd be great if you do a quick introduction of yourself, and then we can dive into some questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I am happy to be here and to participate in this initiative and share about AIDER's work. I am Marioldy Sánchez, and I am associate member at AIDER, which is a Peruvian NGO, and currently I am the director or the manager of Nikaniti's project, which is a project that is supporting indigenous communities in the Peruvian Amazon for sustainable forest management, and we have also a Red Plus initiative.
And then I guess before we get into AIDER and the work that they're doing, can you give us a bit maybe more of your history, maybe some context as to how you and why you got interested in this forest conservation as well? It'd be great to hear about kind of what got you motivated to do that and how you found yourself here.
Well, actually for me was like since always. I mean, since I was a child, I love nature, and I knew that I wanted to study something related to nature and forests. So, I decided to study forestry sciences. I'm a forest engineer. And through my studies, my and the work, I have been able to get to know the forest of Peru very closely. Fascinating, the beauty, the biodiversity, but also especially the people living in the forest, depending on them, the culture, the diversity of culture, the knowledge. I have been working very close to forest conservation initiatives all my career. And I think that, of course, first my motivation was related directly on the impacts at local level, right? Realizing the big threats that forests have in my country, and also that the people living in that forest still very vulnerable and facing a lot of challenges. But then, as of course everybody is starting to be more awareness that deforestation and the role of the forests in the global context, right? And that climate change was affecting everybody. So it's not only impacts at local level, but at global level. So we started to get also involved on that climate change negotiations and And that's why, AIDER, and particularly myself, start working or trying to connect with stakeholders and initiatives related to climate change mitigation and the connection with forests, with forest conservation.
And then, so you've touched on it already, but so AIDER, obviously a hugely reputable NGO out in Peru, and obviously decades of experience. And so, tell us a little bit more about AIDER. Obviously, it's going to be quite hard to sort of put those decades of experience and decades of work into a few sentences. But I'd love to hear a bit more about them.
Mm-hmm. Well, AIDER is a non-profit civil society organization, as you mentioned, almost 40 years of experience in the development of projects with the purpose of nature conservation and also sustainable development, supporting local communities. I think this is the most important feature of our work, is that we are doing initiatives on the ground and providing direct technical assistance to local communities, including indigenous peoples communities. I also can share that AIDER, we work at national level, but we are focused now in 2 ecosystems in the Amazon, of course. The Amazon is the biome where are located the majority of the forests of Peru. And also we are working in drylands, in dry forests in the north coast. And we are developing mostly programs and projects for sustainable land management, sustainable forest management, directly engaging the local users or administrators, that mean local communities, but also other stakeholders. For example, we have also experience on working in nature protected areas, so we also coordinate a lot with the National Agency of Protected Areas through administration contracts. And I think what all of these initiatives have in common is that all of them currently have a component of climate change mitigation through REDD+. But of course, we are also continuously exploring other initiatives related to ecosystem services, land restoration. I joined AIDER a long time ago in 2003. Immediately after finishing university, I joined AIDER to a project they have. Actually was one of the first projects in the country supporting indigenous communities at that time. There were not too many. Now there are different, even public programs, but at that time, not too much organizations supporting directly indigenous peoples in the Amazon. So we were like pioneers. I joined that first project. I work as a field specialist. So basically I lived in the communities for around 2 years, doing training, providing technical assistance. Of course, it was an experience that probably frame all the future of my career and work. That's what I can share about AIDER. And since then, of course, we have developed different kind of projects, international cooperation, engaging private sector, government. Of course, it has not been an easy way in the beginning, but I think now we are very motivated and very confident that we will maintain our current programs for a long term.
Yeah, amazing. Super impressive. I know I'm regularly motivated by the work you guys do, and it helps me kind of get out of bed in the morning. And so, as you say, it's been hard, and you were pioneers in so many activities and things going on in Peru that have, I have no doubt inspired people in other countries as well to do similar work. But obviously nearly 40 years of work. The challenges, I'm sure, were many of them. What would you say are the sort of the main challenges that you have come across, but also maybe a couple of the main highlights for you, maybe for AIDER or maybe just for the time that you've been there since 2003.
Yes, well, naturally, as I mentioned, AIDER is a non-profit organization, so we depend on partners, financial partners or donors from international cooperation to implement our activities. So the first years, because when AIDER started, had not too many projects, and it's important to create a track record for demonstrating also some good practices and good standards for implementing projects, and have the possibility of receiving more support of the key, let's say, organization of international cooperation. At that moment, when I joined AIDER, basically we were always thinking about only international cooperation as main partners. So for sure, the first challenge was that to gain experience enough to really have the possibility to have a continuous flow of funds from the cooperation, to not interrupt the processes we started in the ground with the communities. But this is in theory, right? But in the practice, I think the major challenge, and that was immediately after this project I mentioned, it was financed by Netherlands cooperation. And at that moment, Netherlands stopped being a partner for Peru, for environment issues at least. So for us, it was very difficult to get new projects, and we started a very dynamic, interesting process with the communities we engaged in this first project, and they wanted to continue doing a lot of things, and it was very, very hard for us, saying we can do more, right? Because we need really funds, and also realizing that for them it was also very, very difficult to receive support financially. I think that now I'm speaking about it, and I think that's was like the main motivation for us for exploring other mechanisms. And I think around 2008, 3 years after this project finalized, we started to engage with ecosystem service payment schemes, and learn about the carbon initiatives, and we see that this was a big potential and an opportunity for channeling funds for forest conservation and for supporting communities. So, but it took time, and I think it was a big challenge for us, because of course we need to learn a lot of new things. We need to get establish new relationships with other stakeholders, and we need to develop trust between these new stakeholders and us, and the communities also that were for sure new in this kind of initiative. So that was for us a really relevant challenge. I think it has always been related to the access to funds, because without the funds we couldn't continue that processes. And well, speaking in the context, of course, in the Amazon, but also in, I think, all the forest landscapes in Peru, the fact that the illegal activities were there continue putting a lot of pressure to the forests. Also, maybe other initiatives, not necessarily legal, but with a not sustainable approach, like monocrops like palm. And it was like frustrating seeing what was happening there, and there were a lot of things to do, and not having all the resources at the moment to take action, because and of course these challenges remain until now. I think we have made a lot of progress as country, for sure, but still we need to work on a lot of challenges. Yes, that's us. And imagine, we manage since 2005. We continue with our offices in the Amazon, when in Ucayali, in this case, we achieved to have our own office, and to send a message to the communities and the stakeholders there, that AIDER was not motivated only for one project or one opportunity. What we actually wanted to do is to promote changes, long-term changes, and to establish ourselves there, to continue providing support to to the communities.
Yeah, what a story. And it's been amazing to watch AIDER grow, but also utilize these new mechanisms. Like you say, from 2008, kind of exploring the payments for ecosystem services, and then obviously from that, some years down the line, carbon markets. And we can go into a little bit more detail in the minutes, maybe about the role of carbon markets, carbon credits, and climate finance in supporting not only AIDER but the projects and the people, and the forests that they're in. And so we can touch on that in a minute. But I thought it'd be really nice, and you are the director of the Nika Niti project, and you say you've had a love of nature since you were a child, and so I've been lucky enough to visit the Nika Niti project, and I was very inspired, and it was a stunning project with amazing people and wildlife. But yeah, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what I mean when I say the Nika Niti project.
Yes, well, the Nika Niti project is located in Ucayali. Ucayali region. It's in the Peruvian Amazon, in the center part of the Peruvian Amazon, and in what we call Selva Baja, or it's the low part of the Amazon. So the communities living there are depending on the river flows. There are a lot of areas that get flooded, for example, and we can talk about it later, probably, about the challenges of the ecosystems. But I must say, before sharing about Nika Niti specifically, share a little bit more about the Amazon, because I mean, you mentioned it, right? It's stunning, and I think from our reflection in AIDER, when you think about Amazon, you imagine the biodiversity, the forests, the trees and the rivers, but it's not that. Every time people is associating Amazon with people and with culture and diversity of languages, knowledge, and I think we have this. We always have this commitment, but now for us it's more like visible. This commitment from our work also put visible that, right? That the Amazon is not only important because of all the facts that probably most of people now is more aware about, for example, the fact that the fresh water of the world depends on the Amazon, right? This approach of flying rivers, the big masses with water traveling around the continent and ensuring that all the flows for water, fresh water provisions are there. The fact that more than 10% of the world's biomass is in the Amazon. I think almost 10% of all the known species are also in the Amazon, and there are a lot of species that are still unknown for science. So there is a lot of potential from the nature point of view, indeed. But we have to remember always that area is there are people living there, and people depending on forests, people with a lot of a huge baggage of knowledge, and that we have a lot to learn from them. So I think Nika Niti, and I'm coming to Nika Niti. Nika Niti has also this purpose to really of course supporting the communities, but also I think it's like a commitment to demonstrate to the world the important role that communities play in conservation, and yes, and that we need to collaborate. We need to have more dialogue, intercultural dialogue, and we need to work together to find solutions for particularly this climate crisis we are facing. So Nika Niti wants to provide this message. We are working with 7 communities, which could seem very, very, small impact. 7 communities. In Peru are almost 3,000 communities in all the Amazon and in all the world. Imagine how many people. We are working only with 7. But we believe that from that 7 communities could really make a change in their landscapes, and they can be really promoters of a lot of climate action and sustainable development action. we are working with these 7 communities. There are 2 indigenous peoples groups, Shipibos, Conibos, and Cacataibos. 2 indigenous peoples, 2 different cultures with a lot of similarities, but also particularities, their own language, their own baggage of knowledge. These 7 communities covers 120,000 hectares of forests. The majority of those forests are in a very good state of conservation, biodiverse, of course. You can find there relevant species of flora and fauna. Much of them are endangered, unfortunately, and communities are conserving them in their lands. The jaguar, for example, or other emblematic species like the blue-headed macaw, you can find in the forests of these communities. And we are directly, there are around 650 families receiving direct benefits from the activities of the project in different ways, of course, from the capacity or the access to have funds for their own economic activities, improving the productivity, but in a sustainable way, to connect to markets, strengthening their economies, and for sure having a lot of capacities for face these external threats to their lands and forests, and avoiding deforestation.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think for context, people, I think one of the challenges is of this market is that I'm based here in London, and for a lot of other people based here in London, as the Amazon seems so far away from us, and so it's sometimes hard. That's which is why it's amazing to speak to people like you, Marioldy, who've you've been there, you've lived there, to be able to explain that it's more than just trees. But for a bit more context, you say there's 7 communities. Now, that's not just, hopping on a bus for an hour, is it, to go from one community to the next? You touched on it that, there are similarities, but there are many, many differences, with the ecosystems, the social dynamics, the different areas, different languages, each one with its intricacies and its nuance that, I think it's, it'd be great to hear about some of those challenges, but also highlighting just quite how successful AIDER have been in being able to have that interplay between communities to have one project. And actually, that's what I was amazed at when I came to see, how complex it was. But maybe just if you could talk a little bit more about sort of the challenges and the successes that have come from having these 7 communities as part of one project.
Yes, as every process, new process for them, for us, it has been a constant, a permanent learning. And at the beginning, of course, one of the major challenge was for everybody, including probably us, to really believe that this was possible, right? Because as I mentioned before, the carbon initiatives, the carbon markets, even understanding what actually carbon is, right? I remember when we started the design of the project, communities thought that carbon, they confused carbon, the carbon, as ecosystem service, with carbon, that carbon you use for cooking. And they thought that the project was about harvesting timber for doing carbon. And then, when this was clarified, I remember that then another story came out, or another understanding that then if the carbon was, of course, the emissions, so probably the project will be capturing that air in bags, and taking bags of carbon from communities, to sell to somebody in bags. Yes, and this kind of things, it seems funny, and now it's like, oh, what was that? But yes, at the beginning, for us, one of the major challenges was information, lack of information and misinformation. Now, misinformation is still a big challenge, but at that moment, more difficult for us, for everybody. So, of course, that was the first challenge we addressed, and I think addressing that, of course, the communities started to trust in the mechanism. It was important that they could meet directly the financial partners and the stakeholders engaged in the project. So this put in place like a favorable environment for and trust, of course, to create this group, because as you mentioned, 7 communities, they are not nearby necessarily. They are from different indigenous groups, but they decided to get together and to meet periodically and to take decisions together. And really, of course, if at the end, each community is implementing their own strategies according of the particular challenges they have. But from the similarities, they learn how to coordinate and to decide on partnerships and on next steps for moving forward with the project. Another, of course, challenge is this, the language barrier. But I think this is something that we already, as AIDER, had a good experience, because in our staff has always been indigenous peoples in our staff. So the interaction, the trainings, all the process of participatory design has been always performed in their native languages as well. So that's also something that help us to overcome this challenge of language barrier. And of course, it's not only translation. That's also another, not only translation, like you have something to just translate and that's it. No, it's really to explaining and to put in context all these very complex things about understanding carbon methodologies, estimated deforestation, or how do you do the mappings, etc. Yes, that was one of the, I think, the major challenges we had. And now, yes, the communities are collaborating. And I think one example of that is that they shared a company, an enterprise. Nibiri is the name. That is it's an organization. It's of course a small company that is connecting all of them together with the products, and then the products to the markets. So this is also another, I think, achievement. Of course, still a lot of work to be done for the communities to really feel like they are part of Nibiri, very close. They know that Nibiri is doing a lot of progress, supporting. They know they are part of the company, but still maybe they need to really embrace the fact that they are the owners and that they can really make decisions and changes and everything. Yes, I don't know if with that I answered your question.
No, yeah, more than answered. It was amazing. Thank you. And I think, one of the reasons, one of many reasons why Nikaniti has been such a success is, again, testament to yourself and AIDER, is that, you understand, but also you take the time to learn what the communities actually need and require. And then you kind of, you address those needs. And it's not a one shoe fits all kind of type with your projects. You can't just copy and paste one project to the next. Each community is different, and obviously the needs and wants are all different. So I think Nibiri is a wonderful example about how you address those needs, and in doing so make the projects even more sustainable. So that's amazing. Now, I think we touched on it already, but sort of the carbon markets, and the good, bad, and the ugly of them. They have a huge impact. Their climate finance has a huge impact on projects that you work with and across the world. But how do you see the carbon market now, maybe versus 2008, 2009, 2010, when you started working, or starting to sort of get your heads around it?
Yes, well, I remember the process of designing the Nikaniti, the BCS assessment, all the PD, all the estimations. This was made around 2014. And at that moment, for us, of course, it was not easy to leverage the funding we required for implementing the whole project and support the communities. But I remember at that moment, the carbon market, of course, we were aware of the carbon market, the voluntary carbon market, and we were starting to connect more with international negotiations on climate change, understanding better the dynamics. But at that time, the carbon market felt very distant for us in Peru, and even more for the communities, of course. But in general, in Peru, I think it was it felt very, very far away, like connecting with market would require always to have a partner that can, engage to you, introduce to you, to the players or to the organization. So yeah, that moment it was very remote. And that's why also a lot of stakeholders here at national and at subnational level were not too confident on the opportunities, the process of channeling the funds. It was a lot of mistrust, of course, associated to that. And indeed, since then, well, the market has developed, grown a lot. And with that, also the acknowledgement, I think, of the potential of forest projects, because, the forest projects in forests, we all know that could deliver multiple benefits beyond carbon. So I think RED started to be a priority for investors since then, and they started to come directly to us. And this happened more and more when we started the full implementation of Nika Niti's project, and we verified the carbon units. We received a lot of expressions of interest of a lot of stakeholders, and it was a learning process for us for understanding the different profiles of organizations, investors, impact funds, or companies that wanted to invest in their own projects for their own purposes of climate targets, all the modalities of support. I think that process, of course, strengthened us a lot as organization for understanding all these dynamics. Sometimes was overwhelming because really we had, and I remember when the pandemic started, for example, and everybody thought, and we know that the market has some, challenges, experience some challenges, but for us, I mean, what we perceived, let's say, it's that was the opposite, because during pandemic, it was, at that moment, I think it was the most overwhelming. Every day, emails and calls and a lot of it was really a very particular moment. So, but also encouraging, of course, because we realize that it's a big potential. And again, we are working in an area. It's not small, but the Amazon is, more than 60 million hectares. Indigenous peoples are managing in their communities' lands almost 15 million hectares. So there is a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities there for doing amazing projects. So for us, it's it's inspiring, right? It's there is a lot of people trying to do positive things, so we can match that opportunities. Yes, that's what I can say about market. But of course, in the last months or the last year, we are also aware about the controversies and all this campaign against carbon and RED with a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. We know that this is affecting the market, but somehow, but we are also very confident that we will overcome this stage. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. No, exactly. You're right. There has been some recent criticism of the market and of RED Plus projects, and I think regardless of people's opinions on RED Plus and on carbon markets, nobody wants to see trees get cut down, right? Nobody wants to see conservation projects stop conserving the forest. And so, in light of this recent criticisms, in your opinion, how important do you think the voluntary carbon market is, and this climate finance that's actually generated from it, is required to keep going, and because actually I think what's often not understood is that it's affecting real people, right? It's not just a an ID number, is it? I mean, you touched on it a minute ago. It's way more than just carbon. It's the people, it's the culture, it's the medicines we haven't even found yet. And so, how important is it that we overcome these criticisms and these challenges to make sure that we have a good functioning carbon market, do you think?
Yes, no, indeed. I must say that, we have this. Nicanit is one of our projects. We also have RED Plus projects in protected areas. So I think there is a lot of evidence on the impacts of climate finance on the ground, beyond the carbon units. I think there is a challenge there on trying to, or making more efforts to communicate that evidence of impacts. And also, I would say that, investing in RED, there are different, the co-benefits are sometimes, even for us, every day we are discovering like new things related to the empowerment, the capacity of empowering the communities for doing things. Other, connected results on governance, on political decisions that sometimes they are not so much visible, but at the end they are led but by the results that communities are getting on the ground, and they are feeding authorities. They are doing a silent work, influencing other communities for replication. It's amazing, the capacity of multiplying the benefits, even without planning on that. So, one thing I would say is, yes, we need to make more efforts in sharing evidence, in sharing the testimonies of people directly engaged in these initiatives, because I will not generalize this, but sometimes the sources of information are not direct sources, right? Are based on indirect or secondary sources. They are not getting to the people really receiving the benefits or implementing the activities, or people that is really on the front line of deforestation. Because deforestation is happening now while we are speaking, right? And and it's not it's not waiting, and the communities can not have the same timing that others. So I think at the end, not necessarily all these. The research or the intentions of sharing information to the press, to the world, is not necessarily coming and gathering that information or collecting that information directly from the ground. And as you mentioned, Dan, probably it's because, yes, for a lot of people traveling to the Amazon and going by river 4 hours or one day to speak with, people they don't know, they even are willing to speak with them, they will say, no, we will use, indirect sources, we will make interviews to this person or this organization, but it's not legitimacy on that information all the time. Yes, that's something that I think it's important. And again, as you mentioned, I think that investors, stakeholders, they always should remember why or what is their motivation for investing in climate change mitigation. Why they are doing that? They are doing that just because of a number, an ID or a carbon unit, because they need to show or demonstrate that they are purchasing or they are investing for having this, or they are really investing because they really actually want to avoid or reduce emissions in the ground, because that happens in the ground, in a community, or in a protected area where the park rangers are struggling every day with the pressures from outside. So, and all these funds, of course, again, following the standards, we have a lot of good practices criteria, applying a lot of, there are a lot of efforts and a lot of eyes on these projects, and doing the work on the ground and delivering impacts. So if that is your motivation, all the other things can be solved. I think the most important thing is to ensure, as you mentioned, these initiatives, and particularly the ones that are the early movers, the pioneer ones, they have also more pressure because they are the ones that started that. And I'm not talking about AIDER necessarily, I'm talking about the communities, right? They still receiving a lot of pressure from the context, from the illegal agents, let's say, or the agents that not believe in the mechanism, or the agents that not want to preserve nature at all. They just want to clear forests and put crops there. So they really need to know that we are supporting them, not only at national level, from the global level. That's what I can share.
So, well, I guess, thinking about the future a little bit, and the carbon markets are evolving once again, and Article 6 is coming sort of around the corner and is / already here. Development of the Paris agreements. Peru is doing a fantastic job in making sure that it's ready for this next evolution of the carbon markets with registries such as RENAMI. But yeah, how do you think, briefly, how do you think it's going to affect the carbon markets for yourself and for AIDER and in Peru?
Well, we are very confident that it will help and make stronger the carbon markets because of course we are going to be able to better demonstrate this environmental integrity, the governance, the good practices, and it should provide more trust to the investors, to the stakeholders. So we think that it will be, of course, a positive situation for the carbon market, but our concern, of course, is related to the time that it is taking to be finally set up. That's the main concern for us. As you mentioned, Peru's government is doing great efforts. The last months, I think, has been crucial, and they are speeding up time for having everything set up. And I think Peru is going to be in a very interesting position on the light of the agreements around Article 6. Again, it's the timing, and also probably that we should have like an approach of progressive, because probably there are a lot of requirements, new things that we will need to put in place as project developers, and work with communities, with local stakeholders for all the setups. So it also will take some time after all the framework is in place. So probably we will need to have this approach of progressive, progressive activities for not interrupting again the flow of funds and support. Yes, and also a huge challenge would be to communicate the agreements at national level, because you talk about Article 6 here, and I'm sure that most of the people will not know what are you talking about, really, and I'm not talking about people that is not related to the issue of climate change mitigation. I'm talking about relevant stakeholders, like, I don't know, the Ministry of Economy, indigenous organizations, for example, subnational governments, the governors. And it's going to be, I think, a big challenge to do the work of increasing awareness about the implications and opportunities and around Article 6.
Absolutely. And we at Abatable, we quite recently put together a voluntary carbon market sort of investment attractiveness index, kind of ranking countries on opportunities, I guess, for financing. And Peru's actually scored very well. For the reasons you mentioned, of course, there are always going to be challenges, but nonetheless, we hope that it's going to sort of foster an environment of more projects being developed in the country. And so I guess if there's one or two things that you think are required to get more projects started and to encourage more projects to start in Peru, what do you think that needs to be?
Yes, well, I think one key element would be capacity building. We need to engage more local organizations, local-based
Yeah.
organizations, like AIDER, other organizations that are, with a lot of this energy of being new, a lot of youth with good ideas of proposals. We need to engage them and to build capacities on all these, the world of the carbon markets, the carbon projects, the methodologies. I think there is and also, of course, associated to that, high investment that must be done by the country, of course, the government, but for sure we will need support from all the partners, international cooperation, even why not private sector as well, or the ones that are interested in creating a better and enabling condition, right? In the enabling conditions in the country for this investment to develop and achieve the greater impacts as possible. That's one thing. And the second, again, would be the information, knowledge management. We need also to make more efforts to make people understand how the markets are working, what are the differences. When you talk about RED particularly, you have the bilateral or multilateral agreements, and you have non-state or non-governmental initiatives, private initiatives as well, and they are all coexisting together. And it's not like it's only this or only this. We need all the efforts to be aligned, and the challenge of alignment and coordination between all the efforts, I think is also would be a key factor to create this enabling environment. We already have a lot of elements for this enabling environment, but knowledge management and capacity building are key.
Yeah. And you touched on it, but just to really reiterate, and having all the stakeholders around the table, right? And making sure that no one's left out of those conversations.
Exactly.
No one's left out of that capacity building, because, it's going to take absolutely everybody to make a functioning market and functioning rules and laws. And so I guess that kind of, coming into my next point, we spent, a great 2 weeks last year in Sharm el Sheikh, COP27, an intense 2 weeks. I'm sure you'll agree. And I think, it definitely saw an increase in Indigenous peoples and local communities' voices being heard. We were lucky enough to kind of be involved in a few of those conversations, which I guess also touches on our, no stakeholders need to be left out. But, the time has flown. COP28 is now fast approaching. So what do you think has changed over the last 12 months? The good, bad, or the ugly? And also, what do you think needs to come out of COP28 in Dubai?
Wow. I think that's a difficult question. But what I think what changed for good, I think you already mentioned it, and I agree with you. What changed for good is I think there's more visibility on these stakeholders that are not the conventional ones. And when I know that for example, indigenous organizations' presence on COPs has been always very relevant. They have been there, but I have experienced like a more diverse group of voices on indigenous peoples' organizations or stakeholders, which is something really good to have a different approaches on that group of stakeholders. And I think that's something positive. I mean, of course, I'm sure it's a joint work of a lot of actors to be sure that all the voices and this diversity of voices are coming to COPs to being heard. So I think that this is something good. Not only the group of indigenous peoples, but also other groups like civil society organizations, for example. Also, I think something that is positive but has some implicances but it's positive that since last COP and to date, I also see a greater interest, of course, in standards, in high quality standards, but also a willingness to invest more for that, because it's not only demanding, right, on the side of the market or the clients or the investors, demanding and requesting more from the projects, but not having this interest on collaborating or even paying more, a higher price, for example. And I have looking, at least seems like in the news and the interaction, the declarations or the statements that has been made by different stakeholders, some surveys as well, are demonstrating that this is something that could happen, together with the fact that projects and everybody will have access to some guidelines to improve the development of the projects, and recognizing, right, and the efforts. I think that is something important. Again, associated to this idea that it's not only making carbon units, is really having an impact on the ground, in social aspects, in environmental and community aspects. Recognizing that, having more visibility of that is great. But of course, on the other hand, I'm not saying that bad, but it's not bad, but the concern would be, again, the timing, right? That these processes should not take too much time. And if they are going to take more time than expected, okay, fine. But then, again, we should find graduality approaches, right? That allows the projects, again, not to get paralyzed, or the new initiatives not come out because they are still waiting for all the standards, the criteria, the requirements to be set in place, and not doing anything at all until that. That's the concern that we have. And of course, I'm saying this because here, for example, we experience that some civil society organizations have said, I will not promote anything new until all the regulations and the scenario is completely clear, so I can think about doing more. And that's not a good approach, right? Because again, we need to take action immediately. It's very urgent to take action. Everybody knows that. So how we can find this balance, I think that will be a crucial discussion, or should be a crucial discussion in this COP.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. We don't have the time, right? And we can't wait for the absolute perfect shiny solution. We just have to work towards it, but keep working towards it, and not pause our actions, and not pause the work being done. No, that's really helpful. And so it's going to finish up now. Kind of zooming back out a little bit, and it certainly feels like there's quite a lot of climate change impacts going on in the world right now. I mean, I feel like whenever I turn the news on, something's going on, and we're about to go into El Nino, or we've gone into El Nino this year, which of course has a huge impact across the globe. But I feel like, myself included, I can read the headlines and they say we've gone into an El Nino effect, and actually a lot of the time that might not really impact my day-to-day, or not necessarily, I don't necessarily know what that means. And so, do you have any examples of, this year, and how it might actually affect, this climate impact might actually affect your projects?
Yes, well, we I think one challenge is that sometimes the information is not like available for everybody to take preventive measures. So when we talk about El Nino, still is like, well, El Nino is coming, and let's see what is happening, what will happen, right? Unfortunately, we are facing the fact that we are not prepared. Enough prepared for what is coming, and the information is not properly being delivered and in a language, let's say, or in a way that could trigger action from authorities, even from civil society, from the citizens. And what we know that, of course, we are expecting in the case of our projects in the Amazon, and particularly Ucayali, because actually Ucayali is one of the regions that we already know is going to be more affected because of the increase of rains and flooding. This happened in the past, and we expect that probably next year, when the rainy season starts, Ucayali will be affected. Around, I see a fact some days ago, like 160,000 people are directly exposed to floodings in Ucayali and could be affected very seriously. And in Nicaniti, well, I don't remember if you visited Calleria, but you know,
Yes,
Calleria is Calleria, yes, is very a hard situation. It's get completely flooded. Of course, they are used to that every year, but this is the thing, right? It's not like, oh no, but this happens every year, the rain, the flooding. But no, we are talking about catastrophic effects of flooding, anomalous flooding. And this affects, of course, the crops, the food security, and why not saying, well, the good thing is we now have a technical package for the reforestation, making it more tolerant to flooding, but always you can expect some impact on the forest plantations. And Nicaniti has supported, I think it's around 30 hectares of Capirona, it's a native species plantation in Calleria. That they have a height that will not be affected with this Niño, but in general, this is an example of what could happen also, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very sad. And I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need these trees, all of them, to stay standing because, the forests is one of the best natural defenses we have against flooding, right?
Exactly.
And it's the best thing that we could possibly do to prepare is to, make sure that we keep the trees in the ground and encourage in the environment to stay as it's meant to be.
Exactly.
And so to finish on a more positive note, we are in a bit of a fight against climate change. You're on the front line, Marioldy. But what gives you hope? What gives you hope in this, fight for climate change and in the world we currently live?
It's hard, right, to keep optimistic. It's complicated, and in AIDER we reflect on this a lot. Because sometimes, not every day, reality hits you with some bad news. Of course, the fact that maybe the efforts we are doing are not enough to avoid this catastrophic scenario. But still, I think what gives us hope and gives me hope is people. It's people, not only people in the communities of our projects, but also in youth, the new generations. I think they are more conscious, they are more aware of the importance of nature, of the importance of changing some behaviors and systems to make us living more in harmony with nature. The fact that there is also, we receive some, even not every day maybe, but there are a lot of encouraging news about new technologies, for example, right? And the fact that these new technologies every time are not too much inaccessible. They are more accessible now sometimes. There are a lot of people thinking about new ways of addressing a lot of challenges related to nature, to climate change. I think that gives me hope. And particularly the indigenous peoples, because, yes, if they get empowered with all these efforts, I think, again, they will, and they are having more visibility at the global level, sharing knowledge at global level, demonstrating that it's possible to work together, right? Establishing these dialogues between different stakeholders is other thing that gives me hope. Because it's not only about meetings with decision makers and governments, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think it's important to see these spaces of multi-actor collaboration and a more positive attitude for sharing and learning from each other. I think that gives me hope, and I think I hope also we could continue learning more from the peoples that live in the forests, that are there, this ancient knowledge and
Yep.
this approach on how we should relate with nature. I think if we can learn more from that and use that in our own lives, a lot of changes, positive impact can be achieved.
No, thank you so much, Marioldy. And I want to encourage you to keep up the good work. I mean, the work you personally are doing, but also the work that AIDER are doing. It's truly inspiring. I know that it, personally, it motivates me to keep working hard in this space, and I have no doubt that it motivates a lot of other people as well. So, yeah. Thank you so much for taking
Thanks
the
to
time
you.
out your busy day today, but also more widely, thank you so much for all the work you do, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you're interested in learning more about how you can support these projects, get in touch with us at hello@abatable.com or visit our website, where you can also explore our market intelligence products to help users better understand carbon markets. See you next time.